Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And I am so excited to talk to today's guest. It's actually somebody who has done more podcast episodes by a lot than I have. And so that's always great fun. But we're going to be talking about such a fun subject that I promise everybody's going to get something out of. So please join me in welcoming Jeremy Ryan Slate to our program today. Welcome, Jeremy. How are you?
Hey, Deb. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well. We're getting into fall here, so I've been doing a lot of things to prep the barn and all that kind of stuff for winter because we got a lot of rats in the barn at the moment, and we're trying to handle that because the chickens don't like them so much. So, just kind of getting ready for winter here, chopping a lot of firewood, all that kind of jazz.
I know this winterizing stuff. I live in Atlanta and I'm from Colorado. So, we don't winterize much down here. And on the few occasions where we get 2 or 3 snowflakes, it's just absolutely hilarious.
It's like September kind of starts that process. So I was pointing my chimney last month, all that fun stuff.
Yep. Oh, I know. My neighbors were planting new flowers yesterday. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's very entertaining living down here. Well, let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will jump into this. So Jeremy Ryan Slate is the host of the Create Your Own Life podcast, which studies the highest performers in the world, as well as he is the CEO of Command Your Brand. He holds a BA from Seton Hall University in Catholic theology and world religions with a concentration in Judaism. Jeremy studied Catholic literature at Oxford University, as well as holding a master's in Roman emperor worship from Seton Hall University. His podcast was named the #1 podcast to listen to by Inc. magazine, holy cow, in 2019, as well as Top 40 Under 40 by Podcast Magazine in 2022. He's the author of the best-selling book, Unremarkable to Extraordinary. Ignite your passion to go from passive observer to creator of your own life. He has also written the upcoming book, Command Your Brand, Grow Your Impact, Income, and Influence in the New Media Landscape. Jeremy and his wife, Brielle, co-founded Command Your Brand, which is a new media public relations agency designed to help entrepreneurs share their message by appearing as podcast guests. He resides in Stillwater, New Jersey, where, as he said, he raises chickens and is a former competitive power lifter. So again, Jeremy, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm just excited to hang out today.
I love it. We are going to have so much fun, and I always like to find out from my guests how it is that they got to where they are today. So tell us a little bit about that, because you have quite the background.
Yeah, I'm like one of those people that wins Jeopardy in the privacy of my own home because I have so many of these weird interests. I don't know how to explain it. Whenever I travel a lot, so whenever I travel with my wife, I feel like I end up being her tour guide wherever we're going. Because I took Latin for 13 years, so I go to we go to Italy or we go to Greece or something like that, and I'm reading the transcripts and or reading all the inscriptions and things like that, and I'm like, honey, Romans didn't actually speak Latin. They only read it. They spoke Greek. And she goes, I didn't know that. Wow. So it's, that's tends to be how I am. I'm a little bit of a weird individual. And for me, entrepreneurship wasn't really something I chose, right? For me, I always wanted to be a teacher.
Right.
And as you said, I had, a background in Catholic theology. And my goal was to really be a college level history professor. And things changed for me a lot in that school experience. I think part of it as well is I'd never really explored what do I want to do as a career. So I kind of just did something I was good at, which is continue to be a student. I've always been really good at learning and experiencing things and things like that. So to me, it just seemed like a natural progression of if you're going to continue learning, you teach, and that's how it works.
Right.
And when I was 24, my mom ended up having a really, really bad stroke. And I was in my second year actually of teaching in private school. And it made me look at a lot of the different things that I'm doing in my life. And I'm like, is this really what I want to be doing? Like, is this really what I'm good at? Is this really what I want to spend the rest of my life doing? And when I looked at it, the answer was no. And I think the interesting thing about it, Deb, is it took me a real year to get the courage to do anything with it. And this was in 2012. So it wasn't until 2013. I said, you know what, I'm going to try and do something. So my wife, who at that point in time was my fiance, had seen a network marketing presentation, didn't know what it was. So I saw that and I'd be like, I'm going to be a millionaire in like 3 weeks.
Hey, sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds great. You know, I just need like 5 people and we're good to go. So needless to say, it didn't happen like that. But I actually called the principal of the school and I quit to go full-time in network marketing.
Wow.
Not the best plan, but it was the plan. It was the plan I chose. And I will say it was the best boot camp that I've ever had to like learning how to actually run a business. It isn't what I do today, but it did really get me started. And I went from there to selling life insurance. I sold products online for a bit. And I actually ended up working at a friend's marketing company. I had taught myself how to build websites from watching YouTube videos and reading blogs. So I started building websites for this person's company. And I started podcasts as a hobby. And that podcast saw 10,000 listens in its first month. And I was like, wow, I guess I've really got something here. And I went full time into that in 2016. And we started our first company, which was called Get Featured Media, which we had a business partner. Things really didn't go so well. And we kept a lot of the employees on and I kept paying them. And that's where Command Your Brand came from. It was actually the employees left from that first company. And we've been running Command Your Brand since 2017.
I love it. You know, and obviously I like it because you deal with getting people on podcasts. And, you know, I firmly believe that it is one of the best ways to get your message out there. But, you know, it's a little bit tricky because there are, I don't know. I have no idea what the stats are now. Millions of podcasts. We'll just go with a really big number. You know, and so it is hard. But, you know, I was looking at your podcast and you talk about this a little bit in your book also. You do not shy away from guests that might be a little controversial. You know, and now mine's a business podcast, you know, a very rare. Now I have annoyed a couple people and I'm always kind of like, really? You know, but those have actually been times when I've deviated from talking pure business. But, you know, I like that with your podcast, you truly own it. I mean, you know, you talk obviously with the people who you want to talk to. But talk to us a little bit more about that, because that to me is going to lead us into the conversation about being, about unremarkable to extraordinary.
Yeah, it's tough because I've always been somebody that, you know, I don't like to ruffle any feathers. I like to, you know, keep people getting along because I want a lot of people to get along and work together. But at the same time, you know, over the last several years, I observed a lot of things in the world that I didn't like. And, you know, my wife's like, you can keep complaining about it or you can do something about it. And it's, you know, she's very right. And it's
wise woman.
Yeah. And it's, you know, my oldest daughter is 5. And my youngest is almost 3. And we have another one on the way. And, you know, I looked at that and I'm like, do I want my kids to look at me and say, Daddy, did you do things that actually matter in the world? You know, like, did you like try to make this world a better place for me? When I looked at that, I was kind of like, no, I'm just, you know, it's another, you know, best-selling author, or another this or another that. And it's not to say those things are bad, but I think at the same time, to actually make this world a better place, sometimes we have to talk about things that are those really difficult subjects where maybe neighbors don't talk to each other for a couple weeks and things like that. But it's how we actually get to a resolution. There's a really great, I'm a big G.K. Chesterton fan. So there's a really great Chesterton quote that he says, I never discuss anything except politics and religion. There is nothing else to discuss. And those are the things that people don't want to talk about.
Right.
And
because
I will say
we were
that
always told, no.
But I think that the problem is too, though, is like, if you look at it based on political paradigms, like I think we're pushed into the politics of things, and then you got to pick a team. Like, I like this team or I like that team.
Yeah. And there's no middle ground, which really we're almost all middle ground.
Right. And that's why I try to focus on like, what are the cultural issues we need to talk about?
Right.
Like, what are our thought processes on things? Where can we get to? Because I think when we get there, like, hey, maybe we don't agree, but we can both appreciate we love this place and we want to make it a better place. And those are the conversations I'm trying to have. And it had to take a lot of courage to get there because initially, I will say it's also a learned skill in how to discuss those things in that way. And I've gotten better with that with the years. But initially I had a lot of my audience, call me names and say different things. And I lost over 50% of my audience in 2020. But at the same time, where I look at where I'm at now, our YouTube audience has tripled in size. We're having greater guests than we ever had before. So I feel like I'm actually making an impact and I can look myself in the mirror in the morning and say, this is what I believe and this is what I'm doing for the world.
Right. And you mentioned a word that is actually the first chapter of your book. It takes courage. And, I enjoyed reading your book. I shared before the program. It was so funny. I was going through and taking notes. And then I realized everything I wrote down was actually your chapter titles. So it was like, oh, okay. So this made sense. But, I love the book because it's I guess you could call it inspirational and motivational, but, it was more a lot of just real life examples. And I think that's always so important because when we think, hey, I want to do X, we think, oh, I can't do, nobody's ever done that. Oh my gosh, and when we see people that we can relate to, then it's like, okay, and more importantly, I think a lot of times we read these stories and we're like, wow, they had it a lot worse than I did. There's no excuse for me, right?
Well, I like to say it's the personal development book for people that hate personal development.
Yes.
Because I think because when I look at it, Deb, like, sure, you can go talk to yourself 50 times in the mirror, but like the thing missing is what you're going to do.
Right.
And, I've actually learned a lot more from the mistakes I've made, frankly.
Right.
And it's taught me, what to do and what not to do. So I think for me, I'm somebody that's inspired more by people that attempt things, try things and try to make them go right. Because I think in this society, we've made it a problem to lose, right? And I think if you've lost and you figured out how to never lose again, well, then that's a wonderful thing. It's a great lesson to learn. But I think a lot of people are just terrified to learn that lesson. And I think it takes courage to do that. Like you go into a situation saying, despite personal danger, right? And there's different levels of personal danger. So for some people, it may be physical. For other people, it may be mental. For other people, it may be like societal, whatever it may be. But for you, whatever that personal danger is, you take action going forward and you're going to get it's really interesting. I've heard Grant Cardone talk about this in his book, The 10X Rule. He talks about, you're going to go out initially when you do something and you're going to get negativity and you're going to get pushback and you're going to get everything else. But what you're going to find is the longer you push, the longer you keep showing up, you're going to see that pushback turn into admiration. It comes back around.
Right.
Because you look at it and people say, whoa, you've been doing this for 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. And it's, look what you've accomplished. But in the beginning, those same people were, why would you do this? What are you doing? Are you crazy?
Right.
And I think it's that admiration when you have the staying power and the ability to push through is where it changes. Right.
And we talk about it a lot on this program that a lot of times those negative Nellies, shall we call them, they're in many ways trying to protect you.
Yes.
Oh, Jeremy, no, you shouldn't do that. It won't work, and that comes, it starts really early, right? Now, Jeremy, don't put your hand on the hot stove is very different than, do you really want to be a chef? Are you sure? And so learning to tell the difference between people who really are just trying to help. And then, of course, you've got just the people who want to break you down, right?
Right.
Because they might be jealous. But how do you get past the voices in your head to say, you know what? I am going to do this, or I'm at least going to try.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple parts to this. So let's kind of break this down. First, that's a really good distinction you made between the people that just care about you and the other ones that either feel threatened by your success, whatever it may be. And I'll show you the difference. Your parent may say to you like, oh, why would you try XYZ? Because they're afraid you're going to lose money, right? And they want to see you do well. But when you see somebody else that says, why would you go to college? You're not that bright anyway. That's a person you got to worry about. That's covertly hostile. That's a
Oh,
person
that's just mean.
That's a person that
Mhm.
smiles to your face while the knife is going in your back.
Right.
So what you got to take a look at is you got to look at, first of all, where does that come from? Does that come from somebody that cares about me, or is that a smile with a knife in my back? That's the first differentiation I would make. From there, I would say the voices in your head. I think that the thing you have to take a look at, and I can only give you my life experience and what's worked for me. I am a huge fitness person. So I know if I work out early in the day, I'm going to be doing better physically. I'm going to be doing better mentally. And it's how I show up. It's a big part of what's worked for me. So if I'm working out every single day, like I know I'm physically going to be doing better, and I'm going to have to deal with less of, those things telling me I can't do something. I would also say as well, it's really important to have the right people around you. And even from, like, for me, I've been in the same small group mastermind for years now. And it's the same, 5 guys that we talk together once a month. And then we also, every quarter, we have a get together where we go to a different part of the country. And it's having those people that they're not afraid to say something to you that maybe you wouldn't accept from somebody else, because they know that criticism is going to help you. But they're also there to say, come on, man, you can do this. And I think you have to have the right people around you, because life's going to hit you.
Right.
People are going to hit you. And you got to understand, like, you need somebody there to lift you up. So I would say it's definitely multifaceted. It's understanding the people that are saying it because they care versus the people that are saying it because they're threatened. And you also have to look at it as, like, how do I keep myself in a good space so that I can continue to move forward?
Right. And it's interesting because in your book, you talk about the fact that, ultimately we have to define our own success.
Yes.
But we are still going to care what people say, and that is the kind of tricky part, because, and maybe it's that we're social creatures. We do crave that attention. We crave people saying, hey, you did a great job. It was funny. I had somebody earlier today. I co-host another podcast with this wonderful gentleman. It's called Cancer and Comedy. And we actually won an award. I mean, I was like, whoa, and to me, that was like really cool. And he was so cute because he said, oh, I'm sure you've won other awards. Well, I haven't. And so to win this award, now he's done the vast majority of the work. I tell people, he's Johnny Carson and I'm Ed McMahon. But to have that loose sight, I think probably it is, that little, I don't even, it was just cool to know, oh my gosh, somebody acknowledged us. But we also have to do this without knowing anybody may ever acknowledge us. But we do it because, as you said, it's important to us, kind of maybe in our core, in our soul. We just have to do it.
Well, and I think as well, and I think this is in the book. I don't remember if it's in the book or this is something I just said outside of the book, but, like, you have to, like, I think too often we seek to do things to be liked or admired. And I think you can't, as hard as it is, you have to not put that in the line, because you have to look at it this way. Like, the people I'm trying to live for, would they ever die for me? And if the answer is no, then you probably shouldn't be living your life for those other people. And so I think you have to really, really weigh that. So far too often, we make decisions for, well, what is this person going to think of me? Or what is society going to think of me? Or how is this person going to judge me?
Right.
Well, you know what? If they're not my wife or kids or my God, I don't really care. I think that's what you have to really think about.
Right. And it is interesting because there are those few people that the opinion really does matter. And you don't want to disappoint them, but you also want to be able to do it and maybe explain to them, this is why I had to go ahead and do this. Like you said, you quit your job without really knowing what you.
That was crazy, by the way.
Right. I mean, that's, not a lot of people do that, but, at the same point, you may have also told your parents, your fiance, you just had to do it. You just really had to do it. And if they care, they'll support you in whatever way is needed, even if it's just to say, you go for it. We got your back. I have a friend who, she's very cute. We almost never talk, but every once in a while she'll post on Facebook and all she'll say to me is, I got your 6, which, means she's got my back. Right. And that means a lot that, she's there, kind of if I need her.
Well, it's interesting because initially I didn't have that from my dad. And I don't mean like from like the perspective of he was critical or anything like that, but he's somebody that he didn't finish high school. He
Mm-hmm.
went back and got his GED later on. So like everything he earned was very hard earned.
Right.
And I'm very proud of what he's
Mm-hmm.
been able to do without, a huge education background. He started the machine shop at a company and then was the vice president by the time he retired. So that was all hard earned sweat equity. But for him, he was like, the model was different, right? Like you get a place for 40 years, you stay there, and then
you got the watch. And
I was just going to say that you get a watch when you retire. Like that's how it works. And like, for me, like, that's just not the life plan I wanted to live. So the thing I've had to understand with my dad, especially, is just understanding his reality is just very different from mine. Right. Like, they live in a retirement community in Florida. They love it. That's my nightmare. You know what I mean? It's like, you have to look at like what works for you and where you're coming from. So I think the thing that I've found though, is for me, you and I were talking before we started recording here that I've interviewed a lot of athletes because I am a huge baseball fan. I love sports. So what I've found for me is like when I could send those different interviews to my dad, like, hey dad, I interviewed Johnny Damon, or, I talked to Mariano Rivera today or something like that. And I could send those to him. To him, that was seen as winning. Right. So you have to figure out what is that thing that helps to further that relationship. You know what I mean?
Right. And my parents are the exact same way. My father, he was in his 40s when I was born, and I, only child. So, here comes this wackadoodle redhead who went off in 200 different directions. I am right at the end of being a baby boomer. So, it was expected that I would maybe go to college, but I would get married and have kids. And I was like, I don't think so. I didn't get married until I was in my 30s. And, bless my dad, he passed away quite a few years ago, but I knew he had absolutely no clue what I did. I mean, he just, but he still supported it. And I think that was the important thing.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing with my dad that I found is just the longer I've pushed and the longer I've been around is the more there's been the appreciation. Right. He's somebody that he has to see the statistics and the production to be able to appreciate it. And I don't think that's a bad thing either, because that's actually pretty sane, right? Like you have to, a lot of people will do things for different reasons. But for me, basing things on production and what you actually see, that's also a big deal.
Right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about education. And I loved reading this in your book because, you've got a bunch of advanced degrees. I've got a bunch of advanced degrees. It's just, I like learning, you like learning,
yes.
all these various things, but, there's learning for the sake of learning, right? That's fine. I mean, we do that all the time.
That should be a lifelong process.
Right. Yes. We should be, until the time we take our last breath, we should be learning something. But society in many ways says you must go to college. You must do all of this. And in your book, you talk about how much more life experiences are important than, shall we say, that book learning, those advanced degrees.
Well, you have to also look at where our education system came from.
Right.
Our education system came from, the Austro-Hungarian system, which was trying to build soldiers around the turn of the century. And then you also look at, it came from the Industrial Revolution, where we want to make factory workers.
Right.
So it wasn't made to create people that think, right? It was, you take in information, you use the information, you do something with the information. Right. So the big thing that and this has come from my life experience and also the thousands of conversations I've had as a host, the missing thing is application. And I find that I value your ability to apply and your aptitude so much more than just your knowledge base, right? Because somebody's ability to apply and get things done is what's most valuable. So to me, I think that's not what college currently educates for. And I'm a big believer. I have
a degree in social science.
I have a degree in history. Like, come on now. What am I going to do? Go name things at a museum? Like, come on now. But like,
I'll study it for you.
Yeah. I enjoyed that process and actually discovered podcasting because of that. And I'm still friends with the professor that was my advisor, like this is, we're almost 20 years down the road. But the thing that I think is missing is if you look at the trades and how the trades work, you have a apprenticeship if you're going to get that to make that as a career. And I think actually something that would be great in between high school and college is the idea of an apprenticeship and not an internship. I want to make the difference here because people are like, oh, because you go get coffee or something. That's kind of stupid. Like to me, an apprenticeship is it's very similar to how the seminary functions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people don't always understand the function of seminary.
Mm-hmm.
Seminary has two purposes. One, to make you a priest or a clergy person.
Mm-hmm.
And the second, decide, do I really want to be here?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I think what happens is you get people going into college, committing to a career.
Mm-hmm.
They find out through the education that they don't want to do that career,
right.
or maybe that career won't be around when they get out of school. So I think if you had an apprenticeship for a year or 2 years after high school, maybe make high school shorter, then you get some real life knowledge and ability. And then from there, you decide if you need college or you don't.
Right.
Like if you're a doctor, you should go to college. I don't want you.
I don't want somebody who's watched YouTube videos.
And it's different than working on a car. But do you get what I'm saying? Like I think that practical knowledge is so much more valuable. Right. And to me, like I actually, right after high school and all through college and grad school, I actually worked for a house painter. And it was probably one of the best life experience things I ever had. And I've also realized that painters are crazy. We used to hang on wooden ladders 40 feet off the ground. We would strap ourselves to chimneys. We would take ladders trying to go up steps, and we'd put wood on one side of the ladder to try and get it to stand up. So we did crazy stuff, but like, I learned a life skill. I learned the value of hard work. I learned where a dollar comes from. And I think far too often you have kids coming out of school now. I apologize, I'm soapboxing, but this is really important to me. You have kids that are coming out of school now that they have this knowledge, but they're lacking the application. And they think because they have this knowledge, now they need to make, $100,000 a year out of
There's
school.
no such thing as entry level for them.
Right. There's no such thing as entry level because they don't want to make entry level. And at the same time, can you blame them? Because they have how many tens of thousands of dollars in student loans. So it's a gift and a curse. So to me, I think it would change the economy and the value of education drastically if there was some sort of an intern or some sort of an apprenticeship available.
Right. It'd be interesting to ask our friends, what is your college degree in, and did you use it? And because you're right.
There's a statistic about that in the book, and I can't remember. I think it's only like 12% of graduates actually work in the school for, something like that.
Right. Well, and you're right. A lot of them now, fortunately, a lot of them get partway through and think, oh, no. I mean, I had started, I was going to be a lawyer. I don't know why I wanted to be. Oh, I know. I wanted to be a lawyer because I like to argue. Right.
I don't know. You can be a lot better things if you like to argue.
I know, so I was studying political science, right? Because that was kind of the thing. You got a political science degree, and then you got your JD. Well, I was probably in my sophomore year when I thought, I don't like political science, and more importantly, I didn't really want to be an attorney, and so that's when I got my degree in social science. And I did that because I didn't have to take many more math classes. That's a really good reason to get a college degree, right?
Yeah.
But then you're right. I got out of college with no real usable skills. I could write a killer term paper. I mean, all sorts of stuff, but and so then I had to go back to school. And, and I actually have 2 master's degrees, and, it was, and, I would probably go back again, just, like I said, lifelong learner, but we get out of whatever. And we realize this either was A, the wrong thing to do, or B, not enough. And so that's where I love that idea of let's figure out before you spend all that time and money.
Exactly.
Yeah. Are you in the right spot at the right time?
Yeah, and if you look at it too, like, do you know who employs the most MBAs in the world?
No.
The United States government. They haven't turned a profit since the 70s,
and they never will. They never will.
But my point is, like, I think the best teaching is actually by doing, because you learn, you learn what's cutting edge. You learn what's now. You learn what not to do. And sometimes you learn that lesson by some really bad actions. Right. And I think to me, there's a lot of value in that. Like when as I mentioned, those few businesses I went through before I started Command Your Brand, one of them was an e-commerce business. And I learned how to build websites from doing that. I learned how to build landing pages, learned how to build funnels, I learned how to run traffic. I learned all those things. I had to learn how to do them. I also learned a big thing not to do. I was launching a product on Amazon, and one of the things you want to do is get the sales volume up so that product gets popular.
So you want people, buy.
Yeah, it spikes the algorithm and they buy. I left the buy my product for $1 promo code on my listing, which means that I was out of business about 10 minutes.
Right.
But that was a lesson.
99 cents. You
right.
It cost more than $1. Mm-hmm.
Right. But like, and that's a big lesson I had to learn. And it's something I've kept with me whenever I'm pricing things or whenever I'm learning about, like what I'm going to do with a new product or something like that. So those lessons are hard ones sometimes.
Right. Well, and a lot of times what we do for fun is really what we should be doing, or at least guiding us a little bit. I last week, a friend of mine asked if I would drive her, I think he's 12-year-old son, to his robotics class.
Oh, that's gotta be cool.
Yeah. And so pick him up and so I'm, we're in the car for like half hour. What am I going to talk to with a 12-year-old for a half hour? So I asked him, tell me more about what it is that you're doing and all of these things. And then we talked about what he could eventually do with robotics. And, and I mean, it was just, he tells his mom that I was so cool. I just thought that was like, wow. But he was already thinking about that, and so we talked about robotics in factories. We talked about robots maybe doing like the dangerous things, like the bombs, the bomb type of robots. Or something as simple as working at McDonald's and the robot flips the hamburger, squirts the ketchup on, puts it on a bun, and away it goes. But we also talked about how you would still need people as part of that process. And so that's what he is learning about. And so he started telling me a little bit about that. And I thought, this kid's 12. Now he could change his mind 500 times as to what he wants to do, and more power to him. But the fact that he was thinking about that was just wonderful.
Yeah. I think it is so interesting because also being innovation minded gets you to look at more solutions as well. Right. I think far too often we look at things for, this is the way they've always been. And because they've always been this way, we always have to do them that way. Well, you don't really get to solutions like that. And I think when you're looking for solutions, you find more solutions. Right. So I think that just goes right along with, looking at things from that robotics viewpoint, you're going to find a lot of solutions. And also at the same time, one of the most powerful things to get people to like you is keep asking them questions about them. You're going to find they like you a whole lot more than if you talk all about yourself.
Right. And yeah, I mean, it was such a fun conversation, and it is a lot about what's going on now. I mean, the one of the biggest topics is AI. Yeah. And should we use it? Should we not? Well, okay. First of all, it ain't going away, people. That genie is not going back in the bottle.
Well, those are the same people that said the internet was a fad, right?
Right. And good old Al Gore for inventing it, right? But yeah, it is all about how you use it. And I have kind of embraced it. I use it once or twice a week. I think it's great fun. But I have also discovered that when I use it, and I just use the free version of Chat GPT, because I figure, okay, I don't use it enough to justify the $20 a month, right? Sure. But it's, to me, it's all about it's a good first draft. In some cases, it's a really, really good first draft, and I don't change very much. Or it just gets you thinking. And to me, that's the same as if I were talking to people, if I hired somebody to write a draft of a speech, all of those things. I mean, it's another tool.
Well, I think people are terrified about like AI taking my job and things like that. And I think the one thing that you're going to find is there are certain things that human beings can do that AI will never be able to do. It's not human. And the big thing I've looked at is efficiency. Like, where can we get more efficient and how can I make us more profitable and how can I make us more productive and everything else? So like even our podcast editing process, I've figured out how to take 80% of the work out of it with the right AI tools.
Right.
Like what I'm doing now is we're using a tool called, because regular Chat GPT is limited to, I think it's like 500 characters or something like that. But there's a Google Sheets plugin, or Google Sheets and Google, what's the other one called? Docs. There's a plugin called GPT for Sheets and Docs. So what I can actually do is take a 25-page transcript, paste it in that, and I can then say to it, okay, so based on this, please write me a title, description, and tags for a YouTube video. They're going to help it rank in search. So I'm able to do things like that. That number one, we wouldn't have been able to look at that many data permutations before, and we can actually do a better job. So like those are the things I'm looking at. My new favorite thing too is I'm kind of a process nerd Deb.
Mm-hmm.
Like I build processes like
Mm-hmm.
for our team and stuff like that. So what I'll actually do is, and I'm using this tool right now. It's called Crisp.ai. It's
Mm-hmm.
a background sound filter because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the kids are yelling or something like that, and you don't need to have that in your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But what it actually does, and as I have a feature where I can have it do a transcript of me while I'm talking.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'll do is I'll do a screen recording teaching my team how to do something.
Mm-hmm.
I'll then have it take a transcript of me, and then I'll then take that transcript and I'll put it into GPT for Sheets and Docs, and I'll say, okay, so please write me a step-by-step process that teaches somebody how to do this process.
Right.
So now in one foul swoop, I've done a video version of something and I've done a text version of something to teach somebody how to do something.
Right.
So to me, if you can figure out how to be more productive with AI, it's not going anywhere.
Right. Well, and you still have to double check it, because especially if say it's doing a transcript, sometimes we mumble, sometimes we, and so it's going to put this word in there that really doesn't make sense. But I use it a lot to write my blog posts, and this was one of those things where I had the dreaded white screen that I stared at for months going, I really should blog. I really should blog. Oh, look, squirrel, shiny white object, all of these various things. And, then when I finally started using it, it took the process from, hours, weeks. Like I said, I tried for months to do this, to about an hour process, and when I figured out, okay, now you have to be more specific. You can't just say, hey, write a blog post about, you got to be pretty specific in there, or you can be general and then start drilling down also. But, I got it to where I can write a blog post, or, it does a draft for me. I rewrite it so it sounds a little bit more like me. Now, I do know that I could write it in my style. I just don't have enough content out there, I think, really to be doing that yet. But, and so it takes this whole process down to maybe an hour. And if even that, there are times where I read the first draft, I go, I'm going to change one word and it's going to be good. Which that is a little scary, right? Something, because I'm thinking, okay, am I needed to do this? Well, yeah, I still needed to tell it what to do. And then I need to do everything else that goes along with it.
Well, no, especially for writing, like I think the hardest thing, like you mentioned, that white screen of doom, not the same as the blue screen of death when your computer dies, but the hardest thing is actually getting started and getting moving, right? Like the book, the way I actually wrote that book, is I took transcripts from podcasts and I put it into one big Google document, and then I used the voice to text feature on Google Sheet or Google Docs. And then I kind of narrated a lot of what I was doing into that. And then obviously it's text to speech. So it's or speech to text. So it comes out as some like gobbledygook, but that gave me something to work with. Right. And I think the hardest thing when you're writing is you need bones. And if you don't have that, you can't
getting it
build
from your brain onto the paper is the hardest thing.
And even like something we've done as well is like, you've learned a little bit about my brand to ChatGPT, and what you've learned about my brand in our previous messages here. Can you give me 10 blog post topics I should write? Because that's even the harder part. It's like, what do I even write about?
What's next?
Exactly. So like, to me, if you can figure out how to be more efficient with what you're doing, you're going to be more productive. I think it's the people that ignore it and say, like it's going away, just like the internet's going away, like are going to be in a tough place. It's never going to be everything. Right. But if you could become more efficient and more productive, that's when you're going to win.
Right. Well, and then it frees you up to do other things, whether it's expanding your business, spending time with your kids, watching sports, reading a book, whatever. It has given you more time to do what you want with.
Yes. Because I think as well, if you even look at culturally, America versus Europe, like in Europe, a lot of times they're taking a siesta in the afternoon. They have dinner in the afternoon and things like that. But here, we work these long hours that aren't even always productive. Like I think, if you look at the 9 to 5, they say most people do 2 hours of work in a given day. Well, it's like, let's figure out how to be more productive and then just not work all those hours. I have no problem if you're creating great final products,
Right. I think that was one of the things that we saw during COVID when everybody was, working from home, and many people obviously still are, was, the boss, the manager. Oh, poor micromanagers, all their little heads just exploded, right? Because they couldn't look at what you were typing and what are you doing now? But, I think what really freaked people out was that productivity in many cases did go up. But they also figured out, you know what, they're working 4 hours as opposed to 8 hours. And, or they're working at 10 p.m. and all of these various things. And the companies and organizations that went, wow, this works, are obviously much further along than the ones that went, nope, you got to come back into the office.
That's one of the biggest reasons we grew so much during the pandemic is we've always been a virtual company. You know, we have employees in 3 different countries and in 5 different states and things like that. And, we obviously have the time clock set up so you can't edit it and it figures out like what part of the country you're in. So the timestamps are right and things, but like I'll have somebody clock in at 10 o'clock at night and work on a project and things like that. It's like, if you are productive and your stats are up, I really don't care.
Right.
And I think far too long we've based things on like, I'm available right now. So you need to be working right now so I can be here and watch you. Well, if you hire great people that are productive and produced and are excited about what they're doing, I really don't care when they're working.
Right. Yeah. As long as it gets done. And people's schedules are just so bizarre. I mean, you mentioned at the very start that you are expecting your 3rd child. Well, we may start seeing that you're doing a lot of stuff at 3 a.m, right? Because you're up. And
I go for a run every morning at 6 a.m. and I work out at that time too. You know why? Because my kids are still sleeping. Like, you got to kind of figure out how to build we've tried to build work around our life or build our life around work rather than build work around our life. And I think if you can figure out how to do that, there's a lot of magic in that.
Right. Right. Now, there's another chapter in your book that I really liked. And like I said, I liked them all. But I love this one. Done is better than perfect. And, I am one of those. I'm like, but the comma needs to, but when I finally figured out, first of all, I mean, and this is kind of scary, people don't notice. I mean, you can have typos, you can have, now obviously you can't have egregious types of errors.
Sure.
But almost nobody is going to say, Jeremy, that article was perfect. What they're going to say is, Jeremy, that article really moved me.
Yeah. It's funny because my wife's on the other side of that. Where she's like, oh my God, you're this typo and that typo. How did you email this out? And I'm like, yeah, but it was emailed out. We're already moving forward. It's already like, to me, like, I'd rather work on future iterations of something than worrying about like, how perfect is it, right? Because, I've learned from my actions already while you're out there trying to figure out how to spell things right. So like, to me, that's the way I really look at it. And that's when I look at a lot of the successful people that I've interviewed, that's a trait I really admire because you get this idea of, paralysis by analysis, right? Like you're analyzing, is it perfect yet? Is it ready yet? Is it going to happen yet?
Right.
And you just never get it out there. Right. And frankly, that user feedback and that real world experience is one of the best teachers. Right. This goes back to what I was talking about, life and experience being a great teacher. It's the same way I look at producing things. If I can get it out there and obviously the quality is up to the level I want, if there's some misspellings, if the color's a little bit off, that's fine. We're going to figure it out down the road. But I need that user feedback because I will tell you, like, one of the first courses I built it the other way, where it had to be perfect and it had to be good and it had to be that. And I spent so long building this darn thing that by the time I got out there, nobody wanted it. And I think you can waste so much time not getting real user experience on something, not getting feedback and not growing. You can keep yourself small by everything having to be perfect.
Well, and that also ties into the fact that it's okay to fail. Unless it is life or death, it's okay. Right. Now, maybe if you lose $1 million, that might not be good either. Unless
I'd say it's a big deal. Yeah.
And what they say, he lost like $200 million in a day.
But then that also depends on who you are, right? Like for him, he's gotten to a point where that doesn't hurt him as bad. Right. For you and me, that would probably destroy us. But like you look at it and he's willing to take a higher risk of done being better than perfect.
Right. But it does come back to taking that risk. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to learn from our mistakes, all of those various things. I mean, your book is called, I have to find it here. Sorry about that. Unremarkable to Extraordinary, because unremarkable is okay, and I shouldn't say it that way, because for many people, they're fine with that. And that's okay. but there are also many people who know they could be more. And I think that's the thing, is, how do you get that more part? And then there's this other chapter in your book that kind of struck me, because it was like, and that was we're taught, live your passion. And you're like, no, not so much. So explain that a little bit more.
Well, I want to say one thing to the title first, and then I'll get back. I will definitely get to that, because I think that the point I was trying to make is, I think we're all essentially unremarkable. It's the things we do that make us extraordinary.
Right.
And I think, some people may be born with a little bit more, some people may be born with a little bit less, but like, you know what, if you keep showing up every day, you're bound to be more successful than not. Right. And I think that's just something we all need to take home. And then I guess looking at the other side of it, then looking at passion, I think too often, and I don't know if it's my generation, I don't know if it's before that, but I've heard a lot out of my generation. I'm almost 37. So it's, I'm almost 40. And, people have this idea of like, if you just love what you do, you're never going to work a day in your life. Well,
I hate that saying.
I hate to tell you this, Deb, you're going to have to work really damn hard. And some days it's going to be easy and some days it's going to be hard. But here's the thing. If you have a purpose for what you do, if you like what you do, you're going to be willing to work harder than the person next to you. And I think that's what it comes down to. It's this really great book that I've read by Cal Newport, and it's called So Good They Can't Ignore You. It's actually based off the biography of Steve Martin, the comedian. And I said, Steve, how did you get to be, this big famous actor? You're Steve Martin. He goes, well, I just kept showing up until one day I was so good they can't ignore me. And that's what it comes down to, is you get better and better and better and better at something. And you may not like it at first. You may not be good at it at first.
You might hate it.
You may hate it. And the better you get at it, the more effortless it becomes.
Right.
Well, you know what? You're going to find you're pretty darn passionate then. But I think to say that this thing has to be the thing, and you don't even know, people hate hearing this, but you don't even know if it's going to make money yet. Well, without money, you can't do a lot of things, right? So you have to figure out.
You can't pay your mortgage with wishful thinking.
So does my purpose connect to my ability to make profit? Because if it doesn't, you're not going to be doing it very long. And I think that's what it comes down to. You're going to find when it becomes effortless, when you get really good at it, when you get able to do something, you're going to find you're passionate about something. One of our clients is a mold remediation guy. And he is the most brilliant person I've ever talked about mold. The guy loves mold. I'll tell you what, before he started this company, he didn't give two, rats' butts about mold, but he got so deep into the knowledge of it where he could look at a wall and he could tell you what species of mold that thing is. That's where you put your passion second, right? You get good at something and you're like, man, I love this thing. But you to put that first, I think you're really being short-sighted.
Right. Well, and I think that's why we see so many businesses fail, is because they've been told, you should love what you're doing. Well, there's a lot of what I do that I don't love. Now, the cool thing is a lot of that you can delegate. You can find other ways, like we were talking about, other ways to do it, all those various things. But
there's also more ways than ever to be profitable in 2023.
Oh yeah. And just finding those, it's, that's the key.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, it really is. And I think, like I said, that one was one that really struck me, because, we always have people that say, well, now, what is your passion? And how many people go, I don't know. I mean,
but that was my life experience, Deb. Like I loved history and I enjoyed it. And, I got there and I'm like, dear God, I don't want to do this the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I think you have to have some experience, like to be able to learn, is this something I want to do? And sometimes you're going to find out, it goes back to that analogy of seminary. You're either going to come out a priest, or you're going to come out saying, I really don't want to do this. And both things are okay.
Well, and to me, it's also that sometimes what you're doing can allow you to do your passion. And so, maybe your passion is, to help others build homes, through, like, say, Habitat for Humanity. Sure. But you have to work in order to be able to do that, because it comes back to, yes, we need money. So yeah, sometimes it is that, you do other things in order to be able to do your passion.
Absolutely. Like, you got to be able to fund it. And if it goes back to your passion, either needs to be profitable or needs to have something to fund it. And if you can't, you might love underwater basket weaving, but if you can't figure out how to make a business out of that, or you can't figure out how to make some way fund it, then it's not going to work.
Right.
So I think that's what it really comes down to. And I will tell you, when I started my podcast early on, I had this weird viewpoint of like, I was this artist and like, I can't make money with this podcast. If I made money with this podcast, it would make me a fraud.
It devalues it.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, but like, if I didn't decide I was going to make money with this thing somehow, 9 years later, I wouldn't be doing it. And I think that's what it comes down to. If you want longevity, if you want staying power, if you want the ability to do something, it's got to be profitable. I love having conversations with people. I love doing podcasts. But you know what? YouTube pays us a lot of money. And we also have our business that's able to support me as well. So like at the same time, like figure out how to make it profitable. That is really important.
Right. I remember years ago, you would have been this tiny little person. I was trying to figure out what I was, like I said, I had a degree in social science, and so I worked as an admin assistant. I mean, but I was trying to figure out what was next. And so that was about the point where the book What Color Is Your Parachute came out. And then the next one along was, I think, Who Moved Your Cheese? I mean, all those various things. But yeah, so what color was your parachute? But I was talking to somebody who, very wise person, they said, well, what do you like to do for fun? And so I said, oh, I do this and I do this and I do this and I do this. And a big part of it was I volunteered for organizations doing like their newsletters for them and their marketing for them and all of those things. And this very wise person said, is there a reason you don't want to make money at that? Seriously. And I was like, it's somehow the make money and the have fun we're not meeting. And that's the problem. They, like we said, they're not always going to overlap, and all of those things. But for some reason, I thought there had to be a really big space between them. And there didn't. That was about the point where I said, hey, I want to do public relations. I want to do marketing. And fortunately, here I still am.
Well, and that goes right back to it, because I'm sure you enjoy those things now. And I'm sure you think, you're able to think like, on your feet really fast with things now. And I'm sure that wasn't the case when you first decided to do it. So I think too often as well, we allow the fear of what we don't know and, where, like uncertainty of that be something to stall us out.
Right.
But if you can figure out how to get better and better and better at something, then you're going to find you get really good at it. So I think it's a really important thing to know.
Right. It's funny, as I was reading your book, there were a lot of things that, you were talking about, all these and I thought, I wonder what you think of, because we were saying, you must do what you love and all those things. What do you think about this saying, you should never be the smartest person in the room?
I don't know. Because here's the thing, like, I don't value, this goes back to what I value again. I don't value being the smartest person as much as I value aptitudes. That's the ability to actually use that intelligence and use it quickly. So like, to me, I actually value leadership and intelligence more.
Right.
Because if you can get everybody in that room organized and get them to do something, well, I don't care how smart you are, then you got something accomplished that somebody else may not have been able to accomplish. You even look at like in the early days of the pandemic, we had some of the smartest people available and we still made a lot of mistakes, right? So it doesn't always matter being the smartest person, but if you're the person that can, you have the ability to apply what you know and the ability to lead other people in that, well, there's a lot of value in that. So to me, soft skills are more valuable in terms of like aptitude and leadership, because if you can organize people, you can get something done. And I think if you look at that, you can be really smart and you can be really intelligent. That's not to say I'm not. Like I have an IQ in the 140s, but at the same time, like I have an ability to organize people. And I think when you can do that, there is so much value in that I really don't care about being the smartest person anywhere. I really don't.
Right. Well, and it does come back to, how do you define it?
Yes.
You talk in your book about how do you define success? And there's really only one definition that counts: yours. That's the thing is, it's just, how do you define success? Because it's going to be very different than how I define success. And I think that's where people do get caught up again is, and you talk about it in the book as to, how people define extraordinary. It is different for every single person. And I think we not only have to acknowledge that, we have to embrace it, and we have to realize, here's what I think, here's what you think, and neither is right, neither is wrong.
Well, I think often too, like we're measuring ourselves up against other people.
Right.
And
coming up short.
Yeah. And there's a really great saying, and I'm going to butcher it, so I'm just going to paraphrase here. And it's you're measuring your chapter 1 versus somebody else's chapter 10, right? Like just because you're in a different place in life means your life experience can be different, or, what's happening may be different. So I think as well, there's just too many variables for us to do that, but far too often that's how we do it. So you have to decide, what is my purpose? What do I want? What is ideal for me? And where am I in relation to what that ideal is? Am I measuring up to that ideal? If I'm not, what am I going to do to change the scene, right? Like, what am I going to do to change things? So you can't depend on other people to decide that for you, because you know what? If you're not happy and they are, well, why are you living this life? Right. You know what I mean? I think that's what it really comes down to. Like, you have to figure out, if you're not happy doing this, why are you living this life?
Right. Well, oh my gosh, Jeremy, this has been so much fun. We have to do this again, because this has just been one of those discussions that it could go on and on and on. But until then, tell people a little bit more about where they find you. What are the services that you provide? Because, like we said, you got to make money. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I have a company called Command Your Brand, and we help people to be amazing guests on podcasts. We also have a new service we rolled out where we do a full video and audio production of your show, as well as help to get it found on YouTube doing video optimization. And you can find us over at commandyourbrand.com. Also, if you want to grab the book that we've been talking about today, that's over at getextraordinarybook.com. And once again, that book is called Unremarkable to Extraordinary. So I really appreciate you having me today, Deb.
I love it. We've been having a lot of fun talking about what in some ways is pretty serious. But I think that's part of it is we have to get enjoyment out of life too. It's not just nose to the grindstone, work 80 hours a week. Nah, we got to have fun. We got to have fun conversations. People always ask me, what do you get out of your podcast? Because it's not monetized. I get the most fun conversations, and I get to meet cool people. I mean, that is to me, that's the true benefits of it.
Yeah.
Well, Jeremy, like I said, this has been absolutely fantastic, and I can't wait to chat again. But until then, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
I would say the biggest thing, and it's kind of been a theme in our conversation today, is, you have to work hard at something. You have to let life be your teacher. And if you're going to do that, you're going to find that you're going to be a lot more right than you're wrong, right? Because if you're going to learn from experience and things like that, I think there's so much value in that. Theory is great, but practical is the thing most people are missing. So I think if you can kind of string that together, you're going to have a lot of success in life.
Oh my gosh, this has been so much fun. Well, I'm Deb Creer. I've been talking with Jeremy Ryan Slate. He is the host of Create Your Own Life podcast, the CEO of Command Your Brand, and the author of Unremarkable to Extraordinary. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.